America's two great pastimes collide on this podcast. It is baseball and making money. From the dog days of summer through the October Classic, Greg Bases Peterson's going to be free swinging at the betting board as he tries to hit a grand slam for your bankroll. Now here is GP.
Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome into MLB Overtime Betting, live from the Azuñia Tequila Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas. Greg Peterson joining you on this beautiful day, and joining me in the second segment is going to be a gentleman from OddsShark by the name of Joe Osbourne. It is OddsShark Week right here on MLB Overtime Betting. Some places have Shark Week, we have OddsShark Week, so that is what's going to be going down here. Don't be surprised if one of his other buddies from OddsShark joins me later on in the week as well. We're going to get some trends from him. Going to take a look at today's games, and in the final segment, we are going to touch them all, where I give you a side and total on every game on today's betting board. We're going to give you a little bit of a recap from yesterday in the first segment, but first, I know that you guys tweeted in a couple questions, so I have some answers.
So you have questions, and Greg may or may not have any insight into them, but let's dive into the Twitter mailbag.
This one comes in from Nick Zimmerman. You can follow him at Nick J. Zimmerman. Betting unders in baseball is so frustrating. Bullpens really are not very good or consistent. How much does bullpen volatility go into your numbers? Is there any way to properly gauge it? And it's one of those things where I do look very much at the bullpen numbers. I look at their ERAs. I look individually at guys because we saw yesterday with Kansas City bringing in Brad Boxberger. When you have a bad closer like that, it really is one of those things where you need to star that, and you need to have that in your handicapping. You need to know how many pitches those guys have thrown in the past couple days, because Brad Boxberger, because he pitched yesterday, probably not going to be pitching today. That is something that you want to note, and that probably gives you a little bit more value on the Kansas City Royals today than it does from yesterday. If a guy like Fernando Rodney of the A's has not pitched in a couple days, that's something that you also want to know, because if the A's have a one-run lead, they might go to one Fernando Rodney, and from there, you just don't know what's going to happen. A guy like Sergio Romo, he's one of those guys that you don't necessarily want to be betting on late in games, so it's something that you do want to note, and you want to note when some bullpens are hot and some are not. Right now, my value on the Cubs is going up because their bullpen hasn't allowed a run in over 17 innings now. It's actually gone very well for them. At the beginning of the year, they were giving up runs left, right, and sideways. So it is really something that you want to gauge, and you want to just take a look at how many pitches some of these bad relievers have thrown and how many some of the good relievers have thrown, because there are also some good bullpens out there. The Texas Rangers have been reliable. Although I will say Leclerc the past couple days, he gave up a couple runs, but with that said, they've been for the most part reliable. The Angels, of all teams, have the best bullpen out there in baseball. You know that the Rays are reliable. It is huge for my handicapping. I would call it paramount in regards to my handicapping, being able to take a look at these bullpens, but it is something that I feel like you can gauge, and when you're able to gauge it properly, it really does go a long way. And then I did have another question come into me from Jakey G. You can follow him at one and only Jake G. And this was in regards to yesterday's totals at unit_81. Do you factor in these stronger than normal wins today? I see unders in some games where I've read strong winds will be blowing out to left field. And he put in parentheses, especially in Missouri. And as we know, the Cardinals versus Dodgers game, well, that went way over. That was a 11-7 game, and the total was 8. Needless to say, in a lot of these games, for one, the wind really doesn't come into too much play when it comes to a total, because had the wind been blowing in, a total of 18 doesn't turn into 7 all of a sudden. But it is something that I do take a look at, especially when it comes to some of these parks like Wrigley Field. I feel like Wrigley Field, you have to be playing the wind. If you see the wind blowing out, that really does influence your totals. But there are other ballparks where it really doesn't come into play. Like in San Francisco, a 20-mile-per-hour wind is actually not very much at all. There are just some of these ballparks where the wind is paramount. Like I said, Wrigley Field. I even feel like Guaranteed Rate Field out there in Chicago, that's one where it can impact a little bit more. Sometimes at Yankee Stadium, the wind doesn't mean as much as it might in a place like Cleveland as well. It's one of these things where it goes into just general ballpark factors. We notice this with so many of these ballparks. Some of them, just play differently. You have different backdrops and everything like that. You have to take into account what time the game is being played as well, because when you factor in shadows and everything like that, it's going to affect hitters, which that really comes into play more towards the weekend games, which I always think is very interesting. And then you have to also factor in a dome as well, because you're in a closed environment. Something like Tropicana, you know exactly what the conditions are going to be day in and day out, whereas with Wrigley Field, with like Citi Field, places like that, you just don't know from game to game. And you have to factor in the weather as well, because a ball in 40-degree weather is not going to travel the same way it will during the summer when the temperature is in like the 80-plus degree range as well. So very good questions there. And now let's take a look back at some of yesterday's results.
What happened yesterday? Let's go around the bases and find out.
I talked about bullpens a little bit earlier, and we talked about this team in specific. The Kansas City Royals, one that you really cannot back. The Seattle Mariners were able to get a 7-6 win. Now, Billy Hamilton had a lot to do with that, as if you were on the Mariners' money line, you should probably be buying him a drink the next time you see him. And then Daniel Vogelbach hits his 6th home run of the year in the 10th inning. In this one, Mike Leake, well, he was leaking oil. He gave up 4 runs in 5 innings, but from there, the Seattle bullpen was actually pretty good. They gave up 2 runs in 5 innings, not necessarily great, but at the same time, they did get the job done. And in this one, Mitch Haniger also had himself a nice game. He was able to drive in 3 runs. And for the Kansas City Royals, it was encouraging that Jorge Soler was able to hit a home run, his 3rd of the year. Mondesi was able to go deep for his 3rd. And even though he's not hitting for a lot of average, he does now have 3 home runs in the year. It is Hunter Dozier. He's hitting below 200, but hey, if you're hitting 3 home runs, at least you're doing something for this team. Oh no, it's just not going well for them. Although there might be an interesting spot with the Cleveland Indians. That's a little bit of a tease. We went through this team a little bit earlier, but it was the St. Louis Cardinals knocking off the Dodgers and completing the 3-game sweep 11-7. The starting pitching in this game was not good. Walker Buehler gives up 5 runs in 4 innings. He actually hit a dinger himself in the 2nd inning against Michael Wacha, who has really become a downgraded starter for me. I had high expectations for him. He looked good last year before he got injured, and now he just looks absolutely awful. 3.2 innings. He gives up 7 runs, all of which were earned. But hey, how about the bullpen for the St. Louis Cardinals? They come in for 5.1 innings. They don't give up a single run. And in this game, it was the Cardinals who put up 11 runs, despite the fact that they didn't get a single home run. Now, a lot of that was due to the LA Dodgers having a couple errors. Max Muncy wound up having a little bit of a blunder himself, and then you have a new backup catcher for the LA Dodgers, because as we know, Yasmani Grandal, now with the Milwaukee Brewers, Rocky Gale, he wound up committing a bad error himself. So that was a big reason why the Cardinals were able to get the win. And the Cardinals, a very intriguing team at this point. The Indians seem to be playing a lot of unders right now. That's something that I'm taking a look at. They knock off the Detroit Tigers by a count of 4-0. The Indians were not able to get the job done with men in scoring position. They left 10 on base, but they were able to get a home run out of Leonys Martin, his 2nd of the year. And for the Detroit Tigers, just a complete power outage in this game. They had a total of 3 hits. Spencer Turnbull gave up 3 runs in 4 innings. I have absolutely no idea why the value is so high on him, but Shane Bieber Fever, 7 innings. He has 6 Ks, gives up just 1 walk. He looks like a good bet-on pitcher for the Cleveland Indians, and a little bit of an undervalued one. If you're betting on Marlins overs right now, you're right now burning your money, because they once again did not score a single run against the Cincinnati Reds. They scored just 1 the day before. They scored 0 in this one, as the Reds win this game by a count of 5-0. Sonny Gray went only 4 innings. He had 6 Ks, but from there, the bullpen of the Cincinnati Reds were able to give 5 shutout innings. They did a very good job of being able to close the door. Now, it does help when the Miami Marlins have absolutely nobody that's raking for this team. The best hitter in regards to average is Chad Walsh, who was hitting 308. He was the only guy in the lineup that was hitting above 255. There just is not a lot of redeeming qualities with the Marlins bats. And Pablo Lopez gave up 4 runs in 4.2 innings. I will say the relievers of the Miami Marlins looks pretty good, and I do retract my statement on Sergio Romo. He did come into this game and he did have an inning. That, to me, was a little bit unbeknownst, because he's always a closer, and I guess they just need to get him to work because, well, the Marlins haven't been able to close out too many games. The Baltimore Orioles continue to play overs. They wind up losing to the Oakland A's 8-5. Dylan Bundy, oh my goodness. 5 innings pitch, 6 earned runs. He had 8 strikeouts, that's good, but he also gave up 4 home runs. As for the Oakland A's, it was a total hit parade, as Kendrys Morales was finally able to get his first home run of the year. That's what going to Baltimore will do for you. The catcher Josh Fegley was able to go deep. That was his third home run of the year. Chris with a K Davis went deep twice for his 8th and 9th home runs of the year, and Marcus Semien also had a long ball, so that was huge for them. And for the Baltimore Orioles, Chris Davis, he actually got on base in this game. He scored a run because he walked, but for the year, he still does not have a hit. It's absolutely insane. He is now 0 for 53 at the plate. He has not gotten a hit in his last 53 plate appearances. It's absolutely remarkable. But something else that's remarkable for the Baltimore Orioles is the fact that they've got Trey Boom Boom Mancini, who's hitting .333. He actually did not get a hit in this game, but all in all, he's been doing a good job for this team. And hey, you did have a first stinger of the year for Dwight Smith Jr. That was big for his confidence, but with that said, Baltimore Orioles really not going places as of right now. A team that is going places, how about the New York Mets? They were able to knock off the Atlanta Braves by a count of 6-3. They were able to get to Kevin Gausman in this one. Gausman wound up pitching 5.2 innings. He gave up 4 runs, all of which were earned. He also served up a long ball himself. That was hit by Ahmed Rosario. That was his first home run of the year. And then Pete Alonso went deep for his 6th long ball of the year. And for the New York Mets, they got a solid start out of Steven Matz. Went 6 innings, gave up 2 runs. And then Robbie Gesellman, in a little bit of a stunner, got into a little bit of trouble and he was able to get out of it. A very good sign for a bullpen that has been very, very shaky to say the least. Luis Avilan gave up a run in this game, but Jesus Familia, which I always joked was Spanish for blown save, he didn't give up a run in this game. So if you're a Mets fan, that's got to be a celebration. In a game that involved a rain delay, the Cubs were able to get a win by a count of 2-0. They shut out the Pirates for the second time in the last 3 days. And for the Cubs, they were able to get a terrific start from Jose Quintana. Went 7 innings, gave up 4 hits, struck out 11. This Pittsburgh Pirates team in general just is not really hitting outside of Adam Frazier. He's been doing a good job for this team. Josh Bell has been able to hit 300 as well. He's got a couple dingers to his record. And in this game, you had Joe Musgrove being able to give the team a quality start. He went 6.1 innings. He did give up 2 runs, but none of those were earned as the defense really let him down. Eric Gonzalez made his 3rd error of the year, and that's the only reason why the Cubs were able to get their 2 runs. So Pittsburgh Pirates pitching looking pretty good. Bats, not so much. And how about the San Diego Padres? They're now 9-5. They were able to get a 7-6 win over the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks were able to put up a 5 spot in the 7th inning. That was thanks in large part to the combination of Dean Peralta, who is now just ripping the cover off the ball. He's hitting .367. He's got only 1 home run this year. He's been doing great. And Eduardo Escobar was also able to drive in 3 runs. He had a very nice home run in this game, his first of the year, so that was huge for this team. But the San Diego Padres in the 8th inning were able to get a huge home run out of Manuel Margot, his first of the year. That was able to lift the team to victory. Another good sign for this team was Austin Hedges. He was able to hit a home run, his 2nd of the year, so things going very well for the San Diego Padres. And they were able to get a nice start out of Pedro Avila. He had the bases loaded in the 1st inning, got out of that with only 1 run. In his major league debut, he goes 5.1 innings, gives up 1 run, went 85 pitches. The bullpen of the San Diego Padres was surprisingly a bit shaky, but they wound up being able to get the job done and wound up getting that one. And where in the heck are the Rockies' bats? They wind up losing to the San Francisco Giants by a count of 1-0. The lone run of this game was scored in the 7th by the Giants. It was Kevin Pillar hitting a home run for the 2nd straight day. It was a solo shot, his 3rd of the year, and for the Colorado Rockies, just not a lot of offense being generated. They had 3 hits in this game, 2 of which were by Garrett Hampson. You got to give him credit. He's now hitting a $162, and then Trevor Story upped his average to .217, but man, the Colorado Rockies not getting much going. John Gray, the tough luck loser, winds up giving up 1 run in 6.2 innings. For a Rockies bullpen, that's been pretty good, but the Giants have also been nails. So that's a little bit of what happened in baseball yesterday. Now we've got to turn the page forward to today, and helping me do so is Mr. Joe Osbourne of OddsShark. That is next, right here on MLB Overtime Betting.
Greg is going to the bullpen as he makes a call to the Azuña hotline.
And we're back here on MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson broadcasting from the Azuña Tequila Studios out here in Las Vegas. We had on Jill Gallant of OddsShark a couple days ago, so I guess you could say it's OddsShark week here on MLB Overtime Betting, because one of my good buddies, Joe Osbourne, you can follow him on Twitter at JTFOZ, is joining me on the line right now. And Joe does terrific work with OddsShark as well, breaking down the NFL, baseball, basketball, UFC, you name it, he does it. And Joe, how are you doing on this fine day?
Greg, my man, I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little bit under the weather, but if you want to make it places in this business, you do not cancel on Greg Peterson. So I'm ready to rock, man. What's up?
I am glad to have you here, my friend. And Joe, obviously the token of those that are willing to battle through, and that is much appreciated. And Joe, just taking a look at the season in general, what's really stood out to you in baseball? Because we've seen about 2 weeks of action so far, and something that I've really noticed is that first 5 unders have actually been pretty profitable, but these bullpens just come in and gas can these games. I think there's a lot more value in taking overs for the full game rather than first 5.
Yeah, I've been getting in on some first 5 under betting, and you're right, there are a lot of bullpens that you just can't trust. Looking at the Washington Nationals, Kansas City Royals, Baltimore, the Chicago Cubs, Arizona, the White Sox, even the Cubs, all those teams have bullpen ERAs in the 6s or more right now. Kansas City and Washington are the two that really stand out. Their bullpen ERAs are both 8 or higher, which is just god-awful. But what's kind of standing out to me right now is the Seattle Mariners and this hot start they're getting off to. Kind of in the offseason, it looked like they were going into a rebuild. They got rid of Paxton. They got rid of Cano. They brought in Encarnacion, which seemed like kind of an unusual move. But this team is off to an incredible start. They're one of, if not the best offense in baseball, and odds makers still aren't adjusting. So you can get pretty good profit on them every night, especially their recent series with Kansas City. They were close to even money versus Homer Bailey, for God's sake. So
I know.
They have not made that adjustment. Of course, they have the weekend series at home versus the Astros coming up. So it will be interesting to see what kind of odds we see there, especially with the Astros picking up their play. But that's my number one surprise. Number 2 surprise is the Boston Red Sox. I mean, we've heard of championship hangovers, and I'm not a Red Sox fan by any means, and maybe it was a bit of bull crap that they needed to start. I think it was their first 10 or 12 games on the road this season. That's kind of weird for a defending champ to start their season off like that, but their pitching staff is just an absolute disaster. You should have major concerns if you are a Chris Sale fan. Of course, his velocity is down. Their team ERA is 6.35. Obviously, that's near the bottom of the league, and they're just not performing very well. So that is a bit of a concern. It is early. It is a long season, but those are the 2 things that really stand out to me right now.
I'm right there with you, as we've got Joe Osbourne joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting, and I faded Chris Sale a couple days ago. That was highly profitable. And then you point out that game against Homer Bailey on Monday. 1-21 in his last 22 starts. Is there any hotter trend out there right now than betting against Homer Bailey on the run line and taking that game over? Because it feels like you just put in that bet. 3 hours later, you go to the window and you collect your winnings.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We have like a running joke in the OddsShark office, and you see this on gambling Twitter quite a bit. It's Homer Bailey Day whenever Homer Bailey's going to pitch, and the joke in the office is that it's mandatory that you have to bet against Homer Bailey on the day that he is pitching. And like you said, his team is 1-21 in his last 22 starts. That is just absolutely atrocious. And it's just not Bailey. And like, we know how bad Bailey is, but he's being backed up by a horrible, pathetic bullpen. The Royals, as I said, they have a bullpen ERA over 8. It's just a spot that's automatic. 1-22. He is the best fade in sports right now, and I love it.
It is absolutely insane. And the Royals in general, let's face it, they're not off to a very good start. And they're going to be facing off against the Cleveland Indians team on Friday that, let's face it, they haven't necessarily been great themselves coming out of this year. Carlos Carrasco, 1-1 so far. He's got an ERA near 8. And Brad Keller actually has been a decent starter, dare I say, the past 12 months. He's currently 1-1 with Kansas City Royals. I think that the Royals are probably going to be a nice plus price here. Am I crazy to think that there might be a little bit of value on the Royals on Friday?
No, not at all. That's the thing with Cleveland. Of course, they got off to a slow start at the plate, and they've just stayed there. I've been waiting for them to pick it up. They're at the bottom of the league for OPS. and they're really struggling without Lindor in the lineup to kind of set things up for them. This might be the series that they pick it up offensively going against that Royals bullpen, but I wouldn't be surprised on Friday night if they don't get it done.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in that game because the Cleveland Indians, they have a winning record, but it just feels like they've been underwhelming so far this year. And another team that, well, they haven't necessarily been straight fire to start out the year, but I think it's a very intriguing matchup, and you just alluded to it. Seattle Mariners against the Houston Astros. Mariners are going to have Wade LeBlanc going on the mound, and Wade Miley, who might I say, I think is one of the more undervalued pitchers out there in baseball. He was terrific with the Brewers last year. Going to be going for the Astros. What do you make out of this game? Because obviously the Mariners have gotten out to a terrific start. We all know what the Houston Astros can do. I think that this is actually a pretty hard one to predict.
Yeah, it's the battle of the Wades, as you said. And I was actually quite high on Wade Miley coming into the season. His situation kind of reminds me a little bit of Charlie Morton's. When he came to the Astros, of course, Morton had his struggles with Pittsburgh, and then he came over to the Astros, and he was just out of this world. And I think Miley might have that same potential working with that pitching staff. We saw the Astros really pick it up against the Yankees, especially they had a couple nice comebacks in that series. If I'm being realistic, I think the Mariners do come back down to earth. So we'll see what the odds are for this one. But I think the Astros will win this series. And I think Wade Miley could have a really good game. Battle of the lefties, battle of the Wades. It should be a good game.
It should be, as we've got Joe Osbourne joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And something else that's been interesting, the Minnesota Twins are off to a pretty good start so far this year, and so are the Detroit Tigers. Both come into this game on Friday with a winning record. Michael Pineda is going to be going for the Minnesota Twins. Right now for the Detroit Tigers, as we're doing this broadcast, the good old to-be-determined pitcher, so we're not able to really look at that. But what have you seen so far from both these teams? Because the Tigers certainly have not been getting it done with the bats. That is very, very obvious. Their team hitting right now is right around 200. But the Minnesota Twins, ever since a slow couple starts against the Indians, they were really able to get it going, and they actually just completely clubbed Jacob deGrom a couple days ago.
Yeah, they eviscerated deGrom the other night, and that was a losing bet for me because I had the first 500. I was going after that deGrom trend, which has been red hot. But, man, the Tigers are a hard team to bet on. Last in the league in OPS. This is a team in rebuild mode, of course, but I don't know. This is a hard game to call. I think that the Minnesota, well, it's a hard game to call because we don't know who's pitching for the Twins, of course. But the Twins, they're off to a pretty good start. They had a really good series against the Mets, who started the season pretty hot. So I think the Twins, there's a good chance if Cleveland keeps it up, they're going to be really motivated to keep up with them. And you know, I like this spot for them, and I like this series for them, and maybe they can make a bit of distance between themselves and the rest of the teams in the division.
I totally agree with you, as we've got Joe Osbourne joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And something else I found very interesting is the Arizona Diamondbacks and how well they've been hitting. On Friday, it's going to be Chris Paddock going up against Luke Weaver. I think that Paddock has been absolutely sensational in his first two starts. He looks like an ace in the making, but with the Arizona Diamondbacks, Adam Jones has been clubbing for this team. Dean Peralta doing a terrific job. Ketel Marte and company. The Arizona Diamondbacks seem like a team that you really have to be taking their totals over because this lineup has been mashing so far.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks, they kind of remind me a bit of Seattle, how they came into the season. Of course, they lost arguably their three best players, Pollock, Goldschmidt, and of course Corbin. But they've come out of nowhere to be one of the best offenses in the league. You mentioned the starting pitching matchup, Paddock on the Padres. He's off to a pretty good start, but the Diamondbacks, they're clubbing versus right-handed pitching, ranked 6th in OPS right now. And Luke Weaver, he's the guy that I can't really trust, though, so this might be a good over spot to bet. The Padres are a team who, they're off to, I wouldn't call it a surprising start, maybe better than I expected. I thought maybe that they would be a bit overrated coming into the season based off the Machado acquisition, and we know one player can only make so much of a difference on a baseball team. But Paddock, he's off to a good start. You can't deny that. Weaver, he is not. So this will be an interesting one to call. It'll be really interesting to see what the line is, but it might be a really good over spot.
I think so as well. And one of the better teams in regards to value so far this year. How about my Milwaukee Brewers? They have been off to a terrific start, obviously. Haven't had necessarily the best start to their West Coast road trip, but on Friday, it's going to be Corbin Burnes going against Julio Urias. I think that this is just an over spot right here. Corbin Burnes, ever since getting moved to the starting rotation, hasn't been good. Julio Urias is coming off of being in the bullpen last year. He obviously had some arm issues a couple years ago. We know that the Dodgers are able to rake. The Brewers outfield with Christian Yelich, Lorenzo Cain, and Ryan Braun have been mashing so far this year. I think that there's a lot of value here, both on the Brewers and the over.
Yeah, the Dodgers are the number one team in the league versus right-handed pitching. So that's one thing that I do look at. And if anyone follows me on Twitter, you know that I like to do over-under strikeout props for pitchers. And I might look at Burnes's number on Friday. And if it's a little bit too high, I might go under on it because the Dodgers are only striking out. They have a K percentage of about 12% versus right-handed pitchers. And that's number one in the league. So Urias, he is off to a pretty good start. You know, we didn't see too much of him last season, but the thing with the Dodgers, though, they tend to be overvalued at home. The Brewers have had some issues with the bullpen. Of course, they have been unhealthy, but it might be a pretty good value spot for them here on Friday night.
I do agree with you there. And is there any other games on Friday that you're really taking a look at? Because I know that you post out so many of these pitcher trends, pitchers that have been good first five, pitchers that have been not so good, like our good buddy Homer Bailey, first five and everything like that. Anything else that's really jumping out to you at this point?
Yeah, there's two games that pop out to me. We have the Angels with Tyler Skaggs going at Wrigley Field Friday afternoon. Of course, it's Mr. To Be Determined pitching for the Cubs. This might be a really good spot to fade the Cubs. They tend to be overvalued at home, I find, and they're actually not doing very well versus left-handed pitching. Skaggs is off to a pretty good start. And there's a few big outliers for these teams that people might not be aware of. The Angels currently rank number one in bullpen ERA, whereas the Chicago Cubs rank 27. So there's a pretty big difference there. Los Angeles, they got off to a slow start offensively, but they turned that around a little bit. Mike Trout's supposed to be back for the weekend. I think that might be a pretty good fade spot for the Cubs. Of course, we have to see who's pitching for them. And another one that I'm looking at is the Mets game. Now, the Mets will be in Atlanta. Zach Wheeler is pitching against To Be Determined. And Wheeler is a guy who I was very, very high on coming into the season. I probably reached for him a bit too early in my fantasy draft. And he's just gotten obliterated in his first two starts of the season. He's coming into this one with a 10.24 ERA. And one thing that people probably haven't noticed or they might not be aware of is that when he had Kevin Plawecki as his catcher last season, he had him for 67 innings pitched. He had a 1.88 ERA. So that's kind of one thing that I like to look at, who's catching for the actual pitcher, because some pitchers perform better with certain catchers. And that was a gigantic outlier for me last season. And Plawecki, of course, he is on the Indians right now. So maybe that is something that's affecting Wheeler, but he's off to a brutal, brutal start, man. So this might be a good spot for Atlanta.
And you mentioned those games. I'm seeing a picture of the Cubs of Cole Hamels in that game against the LA Angels, so I think that that's going to be really interesting. We've got Joe Osbourne of OddsShark joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting, and we mentioned the Homer Bailey trend and everything like that. Is there any other trends, either for the good or the bad, that you've been noticing that have been really hot to bet on so far this year, and just maybe even dating back to last year as well?
Well, there's a few incredible over bets so far. Of course, the season is very young, but we have 5 teams that are hitting over at 80% so far. We have the Cubs, Mariners, White Sox, Mets, and Diamondbacks. Now, in the case of the Cubs, that has to do with they're hitting pretty good, and we know how bad their bullpen is, and their starting pitching hasn't been good either. Yu Darvish has been an incredible disappointment. The Mariners are the best offense in baseball, and the other team's a little bit of a mix of the others. But looking at the underside of things, we have a few standout clubs as well. The Rays have only gone under in 2 of their games so far. Astros have gone under 75% of their games. Same with the Blue Jays, which isn't really much of a surprise. But those are a few teams that are really standing out for totals betting for me so far. One that I missed on, of course, Sunday, the first time I bet it publicly, it's the Jacob deGrom first 5 under. I forget. I don't have the number right in front of me, Greg, but it was something incredible. Like
I thought it was like 23-3 or something like that for first 500.
It was over 80%. And this is going back to, I remember the date, of course, April 21st last season. He has a ERA in the first 5 innings of under 1.5 or something incredible like that. That's one that I definitely will look to play again. Of course, I don't bet trends blind. I always like to try to find some stats to back them up. And doesn't matter what the sport is. I do that in the NBA too. I like to have the stats to back up the trends because you just can't play these trends blind. But that is one that I will look to bet again. It will be interesting to see if they move the total in his next game up. They're always at 3.5 for a DeGrom first 5 innings, sometimes 3. It will be interesting to see what they have that number at and who he's matched up against. I did feel a little bit uneasy about it because he was going against Kyle Gibson. So, of course, I felt more uneasy about Gibson, and DeGrom ends up having the much worse performance. So, one other thing that I like to keep an eye on is whenever Dylan Bundy starts. Now, it's not quite Homer Bailey Day, but this guy has been an absolute disaster going back to last season. He's not off to a good start this year. Similar situation to Bailey. He's being backed up by an absolutely brutal bullpen. So in situations like that, of course, best case scenario, the money line isn't too high, but I will be looking at the other team's total. And I hope we get to a point where Dylan Bundy Day can be as official as Homer Bailey Day.
I'm hoping so too, because on Thursday I was on the A's run line as well. So it's one of those things where at the time of this recording, we have no idea whether that cashed or not, but at the same time, I am right there with you. And Joe, I'd like to close it up with this. Where can good people out there find you on social media and elsewhere, since I know that you post out there a ton of good trends and you just do tremendous work in general?
Thank you very much, my man. Yeah, it's super easy to find me on Twitter, JTFOZ. I post my MLB stats and trends and picks, of course, daily, Monday through Friday, and sometimes on Saturday and Sunday, depending on what's going on with the family. I'm all over the NBA during the playoffs, a little bit of NHL. I cover the UFC, especially the big fights. And obviously, I'm looking forward to NFL season getting going with the draft here in a couple of weeks. So you can find me there on Twitter and, of course, over on OddsShark, oddshark.com. You can find all my work over there.
And I do have one more question for you, just because you do post it up on Twitter a lot. What is the beer of choice for Mr. Joe Osbourne?
The beer of choice? Well, Greg, that depends. If I'm drinking, like, to have, like, a nice beer with a steak or a nice meal, I like to go with like a nice IPA or maybe a red or a Belgian white or something like that. Now, if I'm drinking for volume, like if I'm with a bunch of guys and I'm drinking all day, I will opt for sometimes a Coors Light, a Bud Light, a Miller Lite, just because you can drink more of them. Now, I know there's a lot of macho dudes out there who give other dudes who drink light beer a hard time, but I'd rather be able to down a fair amount of them than get filled up on Guinnesses and porters and things like that. So it all depends on the day. It all depends on the setting, my man.
I cannot hate there. As the official drink of MLB Overtime Betting, as you know, is Bud Light Platinum, a beer in which it has light in the name, but it's a 6% alcohol by volume drink, unlike the 4.1% light beers. So we definitely go big or go home on this podcast. As Joe Osbourne has been my guest right here on MLB Overtime Betting. Good to get a little beer talk in there as well. Have a little fun there. And coming up next, we're going to have some fun because I'm going to give you a side and total on every game on the betting board and a little something we like to call Touch 'em All.
Hey, I'm Steve Heitner, the guy who uttered the famous phrase, "That's gold." And that's the inspiration of my new podcast, That's Gold with Steve Heitner. We talk sports, sports betting, movies, comedy, food, drink, Vegas, music, movies, and more. 5 days a week. Did I say movies twice? Look, guys love it, whether they're hip or worried about breaking a hip. Find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify and Stitcher. That's Gold with me, Steve Heitner.
Welcome back to MLB Overtime. Greg is throwing a gem, so yeah, he better not blow it.
And a big thanks to Joe Osbourne for joining me in the last segment as we are back here in the Zunia Tequila Studios for MLB Overtime Betting. And now it is that time of the show in which I give you a side and total on every game on today's MLB betting board as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Please note that any changes that are made to these plays are going to be noted on my Twitter page at @unit_81. Some of these plays are going to be locked in. Some of these I am still waiting for a little bit of better numbers on as well. So all of that will be noted as we're going to start in Las Vegas rotation order. 951, 952. It is the Pittsburgh Pirates on the road facing off against the Washington Nationals. Patrick Corbin goes for the Nationals. Meanwhile, Trevor Williams for the Pirates. No, not of the Caribbean. But what I can say is that those Pirates are a plus 150 underdog across the board. Meanwhile, if you like the Nationals, you're going to be laying between 160 and 165 on the money line. The over on this game is a little bit juiced. It's between minus 110 and minus 115. The under is between minus 110 and minus 105. And this is one in which I do have to take a look at the under. I feel like Trevor Williams might be one of the most underrated starters out there in baseball. He has been absolutely terrific ever since the All-Star break last year. He's got an ERA below 2 in that time period. So far this year, he's 1-0 with a 2.25 ERA. He just seems to be picking up where he left off last year. With the Nationals, they've got some good bats. Anthony Rendon has been sensational for this team. He's got 4 home runs. He's hitting above 400. We saw Juan Soto be able to go deep against the Phillies in that series. He's been absolutely sensational for this team, but with the Pittsburgh Pirates, I do feel like they're going to be able to get some good pitching out of Trevor Williams once again in this one. Their bullpen hasn't necessarily been nails, but at the same time, it isn't necessarily bad. I know that they've got Kyle Crick right now on the 10-day injured list, but I do have some faith in this bullpen of being able to hold down a lead. And in general, the Pittsburgh Pirates not getting a lot of hitting. Jose Ozuna and Kevin Newman are currently on the injured list, so that means that they're using a mismatch of players out there in the infield. Jung Okung has not gotten things going, but I do like what Bell is providing this team at the middle of the lineup. He so far has a pair of home runs. He's been able to drive in 9 runs. Josh Bell doing a good job for the squad. And then for the Washington Nationals, we know that the bullpen absolutely stinks. I think that Patrick Corbin probably going to be able to give them a decent outing. He's been okay this year. He hasn't gotten a decision so far this year, 3.75 ERA. He's not quite what he was last year with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I figured there'd be a little bit of regression, but all in all, he's still a solid starter. But I'm going to go with the better bullpen in this spot, and I do love the way that Trevor Williams is pitching. So for that reason, I am going to be on the Pittsburgh Pirates in this spot, and I'm going to take this total under. Currently in wait-and-see mode on both these numbers, trying to see if the Pirates tick up to maybe a 155 or 160, and trying to see if I can get even juice on this under. We move on to 953, 954 on the betting rotation. It is Philadelphia Phillies in Miami to face off against the Marlins. Sandy Alcantara goes for the Miami Marlins. Jake Arrieta for the Philadelphia Phillies. So on this one is 8 across the board. Over and under both at minus 110. If you like the Phillies, you're going to be laying a big premium between minus 164 and minus 175. Meanwhile, if you like the Fish, you're going to be getting a plus price of between plus 152 and plus 155. I do like the Phillies in this spot, and I do have to take the Phillies run line in order to mitigate some of the juice. Right now, I am seeing plus 100 on the Phillies run line. I'm trying to see if I can get a little bit of a plus price. So right now, I'm in wait-and-see mode on that one. Sandy Alcantara is actually a pretty good pitcher for the Miami Marlins. He's been doing a good job of being able to limit hard contact. He doesn't necessarily have wipeout stuff. He's not a guy that's going to put up there 15 strikeouts or anything like that, but he does a very solid job of being able to keep the ball in the yard in a pitcher-friendly ballpark out there in Miami as well. I am also going to look at this game under. Jake Arrieta has been a little bit erratic ever since a few years ago. He just completely lit the world on fire with the Chicago Cubs. But all in all, so far this year, he's done a good job of being able to limit damage in 13 innings in his 2 starts so far this year. He has just 7 strikeouts to 9 walks, but opponents are hitting less than 200 off of him, which I'd like to see. Last year with the Philadelphia Phillies, there were some very good periods. There were some not so good periods. He clearly doesn't have wipeout stuff anymore, and I do think that he's going to have a little bit more command in this one. And it helps with the fact that the Marlins are not hitting to save their lives right now. Starlin Castro is hitting 255. Curtis Granderson at the top of the lineup isn't doing a lot. JT Riddle has a pair of home runs, but he's not hitting worth a lick. Jorge Alfaro might be the best hitter on this lineup right now. He's hitting right around 260, 3 home runs, 6 RBI. Lewis Brinson, for goodness sakes, is right now one of the best mashers for the Miami Marlins. They just have nothing going in regards to their bats. And with the Philadelphia Phillies, you've got a bunch of guys that are raking right now. Rhys Hoskins, 5 home runs, 15 RBI. Odubel Herrera hitting above 300. Bryce Harper hitting above 300. He's been providing some power. Maikel Franco has been able to go deep quite a few times. Andrew McCutcheon's been a little bit shaky to say the least, along with JT Realmuto, but you've got so many weapons for the Philadelphia Phillies. I think that they're going to be able to hang a decent amount of runs against a Marlins team that has some good pitching, but right now they have absolutely no offense whatsoever. So for that reason, I'm going to be playing Phillies run line and the under right now in wait-and-see mode to see if I can get a little bit of better numbers on each of these. 955, 956 on the betting rotation. The New York Mets are in Atlanta to face off against the Braves. Kyle Wright goes for the Braves. Meanwhile, Zach Wheelin' and Dealin' Wheeler goes for the New York Mets. Total in this game is 9, and that is shaded to the under. Under is minus 120. The over is even. If you like the New York Mets, you're actually going to be getting a plus price of between plus 103 and plus 106. If you want to take a shot on the Braves, that is between minus 113 and minus 116. I don't understand what the love for Kyle Wright is in this spot. I know that Zach Wheeler has been off to a little bit of a shaky start so far this year, but all in all, I think that he's a pretty good pitcher. I think that he's going to be able to find his form. I really like his upside. I think that in a couple years he's going to be a stud, but as of right now, he's got command issues. He doesn't know how to necessarily put guys away. And both these teams don't necessarily have great bullpens. I would say the Mets have a little bit of a lesser bullpen, but I do like the starter that they're trotting out there a little bit better in Zach Wheeler. And with the Mets, you've got some guys that are doing a good job of being able to hit for this team. Pete Alonso has just been terrific to be able to begin the year. Robinson Cano is struggling, but you got to think that he's going to be coming around at some point. You had Rosario being able to hit a dinger for the New York Mets yesterday as well. That was obviously good to see. Michael Conforto hitting over 350 along with Wilson Ramos and Jeff McNeil in the middle of the lineup. So all those guys are getting the job done. And for the Atlanta Braves, Raul Acuna Jr. is certainly coming around for this team, but Johan Camargo is right now hitting below 100. Things are just not going well for him at this point. Also with the Atlanta Braves, you've got a bunch of guys that are really hit or miss. Nick Markakis has started to pick it up once again. Freddie Freeman hitting above 400. Ozzie Albies has been terrific at the top of the lineup, but what are you going to get out of Josh Donaldson? He still has not come around for this team. I just think that there are more question marks right now with the Atlanta Braves than there are with the New York Mets. So for that reason, I'm going to take the plus price here with the New York Mets. I do feel like Zach Wheeler is going to be able to provide a quality start, so I'm going to be on this total under as well. Right now, I'm waiting see mode to see if I can get a little bit of better juice on the under, but have locked in the New York Mets as a play. Game 957, 958 on the betting rotation. It is the San Diego Padres in Arizona to face off against the Diamondbacks. Luke Weaver goes for the Diamondbacks. Chris Paddock goes for the San Diego Padres. Padres are between a minus 115 and minus 125 favorite. This number is bouncing around a little bit. Diamondbacks between plus 105 and plus 115 underdogs. The total on this game is 8.5. The under is shaded quite heavily. You can get anywhere between minus 110 and minus 120 juice, which means that the over is between even money and minus 110 as well. I do think that Chris Paddock is an ace in the making. I really do like the upside of this kid. But what I do like for the Arizona Diamondbacks is the fact that you've got a lot of guys that are hitting very well for this lineup. I do think that you're getting some good production out of the San Diego Padres. They've amassed some very good pieces that are able to mash. Hunter Renfroe, I feel like, might be one of the most underrated players out there in baseball. He entered into Thursday's action with 4 home runs and 7 RBIs, hitting above 300. Fernando Tatis Jr. and Fenmil Reyes are still coming around with the bats a little bit, though Tatis Jr. already has 3 home runs. That's something you like to see. Will Myers is doing a good job of gaining on base. Eric Hosmer hasn't seen things come around, but Manny Machado, even though he's not hitting for average, he's been doing a good job of providing power. But with the Arizona Diamondbacks, I feel like you've got the superior lineup. Wilmer Flores has not really gotten the job done at first base so far this year, but Gerard Dyson was able to come up with a nice walk-off home run a couple days ago. Noah Ahmad at the bottom of the lineup is doing a great job for this team. And then you've got Dean Peralta and Adam Jones, both guys who are hitting well above 300, and in the case of Adam Jones, already has 3 dingers so far this year, so I really like what they're getting out of him, and I do think that Luke Weaver is going to be able to provide a good start. He got shelled in his first outing of the year, but we're seeing things being able to turn around for him a little bit, and I do like the upside of Luke Weaver. So for that reason, I am going to be taking the plus price of the Arizona Diamondbacks in this spot, and I already locked in that plus 115. And I do think that this is a game that's going to feature some good pitching. I do like the upside of the Diamondbacks bullpen. We talked to Mike Farron about this yesterday. I'm a believer in them, and the San Diego Padres, they've got one of the better bullpens out there in the MLB as well. So also locked in the under of 8.5 at minus 110 as well. So those are the plays there as we go on to 9:59, 9:60 on the betting rotation. It is the LA Dodgers playing host to the Milwaukee Brewers. Corbin Burns goes for the Brewers. Julio Arias goes for the LA Dodgers. The Brewers are between a plus 140 and plus 145 underdog. If you want to lay it with the Dodgers, that is between minus 150 and minus 160. Total in this game is 8, and it is shaded over. The over is between minus 115 and minus 120. The under is between even juice and minus 105. In this spot, I really do have to go with the Brewers at a very nice plus price. We've just seen the Dodgers bullpen get relentlessly shelled so far this year. Walker Buehler did not give them a very good start yesterday, and the bullpen, well, they did no favors to him either. It's just been one of those things where the Dodgers are playing so many overs at this point, and I'm going to be on the over in this game as well. I just can't see any way that this game is going to go under. I was able to get minus 110 on the juice offshore on an over 8. I advise a play there. If this thing ticks up to 8.5 and you're able to get even juice, I advise a play there. Even if you're only able to get minus 115 or minus 120 juice, I feel like this is a game that is certainly going to go over. With the Brewers, you've got an outfield that is just hitting the ball left and right. Lorenzo Cain, Christian Yelich, and Ryan Braun doing a terrific job. Mike Moustakas seems to be coming around with the bat a little bit. He got off to a little bit of a rough start. Jesus Aguilar has not been getting the job done in regards to hitting, but you've got a lot of weapons out there for the Brewers. Heck, even Orlando Arcia towards the bottom of the lineup seems to be coming around. Meanwhile, for the Dodgers, Cody Bellinger has been terrific for this team. 7 home runs, 19 RBI, hitting above 400. We saw Justin Turner be able to have a very good series against the St. Louis Cardinals as well. For the year, he's hitting just below 300. AJ Pollock seems to be in a little bit of a rut, but when he's in a rut, other guys step up, like David Freese. He's now hitting nearly 300. He was able to hit his first home run of the year yesterday. Kike Hernandez doing a great job. Heck, they even got a home run from the pitcher yesterday. This is just a Dodgers team that they're giving up a lot of runs and they're scoring a lot of runs. I think that this is going to be a shootout, and Corbin Burns has not been a very good starter ever since coming out of the bullpen, but you got a lot of questions with Julio Urias as well. He was coming out of the bullpen last year because he's had some major arm issues the past couple years. He obviously had a lot of upside coming into the MLB a couple years ago, but I'm just still not sold on him. I think that the Brewers bullpen is better than that of the Dodgers, which is why I am taking this plus price, and I am going to be taking this total over. Already locked in the over. Currently in wait-and-see mode on the Brewers, trying to see if I can get something like a plus 160. 961, 962 on the betting rotation. It is the Colorado Rockies, and they are in San Francisco to face off against the Giants. Chad Bettis goes for the Colorado Rockies. Drew Pomerantz for the San Francisco Giants. The total on this game is 7.5, and it's shaded over. The over is between minus 115, and actually it's not between anything else because it is 115 across the board. That makes the under minus 105, and the Giants are a slight favorite in this game. If you want to lay it with the Giants, that is between minus 114 and minus 116. Then the Colorado Rockies are between plus 104 and plus 106. I'm also seeing a even money out there on the Colorado Rockies as well. You probably don't want to be taking that if you're wanting to back the Rockies, and this is a spot where I am going to take the Rockies. Drew Pomerantz seems to be off to a better year this year than he had with the Boston Red Sox. That obviously was not a good fit with them. But with that said, I do like the way that things are starting to come around for the Colorado Rockies. Their bats have been very inconsistent so far this year, and it feels like they are starting to get a little bit of something because you've got Charlie Blackmon at the top of the lineup. He's been doing a good job of being able to get on base, even though he's not necessarily hitting for power. Norland Arenado still doing a good job in regards to average. Trevor Story, even though the average isn't there at this point, he provides some pop. He's already got 4 home runs entering into Thursday's action. David Dahl has been hitting .343 for the year, so I do like what he's able to bring to the table. Meanwhile, for the San Francisco Giants, there's just not many guys that are able to generate anything for this team. I do think that the acquisition of Tyler Austin was big, but what are you really going to get out of guys like Brandon Belt? It just feels like he's a little bit over the hill. He's hit a couple home runs so far this year, but he just hasn't had a lot of success up there at the plate. Going into Thursday, Joe Panic, Buster Posey, Brandon Belt, Kevin Pillar, and Gerardo Parra were all hitting 215 or lower. Just not too many redeeming qualities there. And then for the Colorado Rockies, I do think that they are going to be able to jump on Drew Pomeranz. I do think that the bullpen of the Giants is a little bit of a strength, but I think that the Colorado Rockies are able to bust out here, and they're going to be able to hang 5+ runs in this game. So for that reason, I am going to be looking at this total over, and I am all about the Colorado Rockies. Chad Bettis is a guy that he himself gives up a couple runs, but with the San Francisco bats being so poor, I think that the damage is going to be limited a little bit, and I do think that the Colorado Rockies have a much better bullpen than they had last year. I think that Wade Davis has really refound his form. You've got guys like Oberg coming out of the bullpen that are doing a good job for this team as well. So for that reason, taking the plus price here with the Colorado Rockies, and I am playing this game over 7.5, and both these plays are all locked in. 963, 964 on the betting rotation. The Chicago White Sox are in New York to face off against the Yankees. The Yankees are a massive favorite. They're between minus 225 and minus 240. That means that the White Sox are between plus 195 and plus 210. Total in this game is 9, and it is shaded over. Over is minus 115 juice. The under is minus 105, with Lucas Giolito going on the bump against J.A. Happ of the Yankees. Lucas Giolito is just a guy that you really cannot back. He's just had control issues all throughout his career. This is one where I like the Yankees, but I don't want to be laying that big giant juice. And I think the Yankees should be able to win this game by multiple runs. So I'm right now looking at the Yankees run line. That is currently between minus 120 and minus 125 from where I'm seeing. Trying to see if the juice dips down a little bit lower so that way I can lay more of a minus 110 here. But with the Yankees, even though they are so banged up, they still have a bunch of guys that are able to get on base and they're able to hit. Aaron Judge, we all know, is one of the best hitters out there in the big leagues. You got to think that he's going to be able to give this team a big boost. Didi Gregorius is currently out of the lineup along with Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Hicks, Gary Sanchez. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but what you do still have with the New York Yankees is a guy in Luke Voit that's able to hit for some power. He hasn't been necessarily doing a good job with his batting averages. That's right around 200, but Clint Frazier and DJ LeMahieu have both been hitting for a very high average. Both those guys right around 400. Austin Romine doing a decent job with the bat as well in the absence of Gary Sanchez. And when you take a look at the Chicago White Sox, their bullpen is just absolutely awful. You got guys like Fry that are coming in, and they're just not giving this team a hold to save their lives. They were giving up nearly 9 runs a game to the Tampa Bay Rays, a light-hitting team in the Tampa Bay Rays. You just take a look at some of the guys that are coming in. Herrera has an ERA below 2. He's been able to get the job done. And Alex Colome, I hope I said that last name correctly, by the way, he's been decent, but past that, there's just not a lot of redeeming qualities with that White Sox bullpen. I really do not like Lucas Giolito at all. And J.A. Happ, even though he had a really rough first outing in which he took a loss against the Baltimore Orioles, I do like his upside overall. This is a guy that does a good job of not walking guys. He lends himself to a little bit too much contact, so I do think that there will be a lot of runs in this game, so I already locked in the over, but I think that the Yankees should be able to provide a lot of pop themselves. I think that they're going to be able to hang a very crooked number on the Chicago White Sox, so wait and see mode on the price I'm getting on the Yankees run line, but have already locked in over 9 runs. 965, 966 on the betting rotation. It is the Tampa Bay Rays in Toronto, north of the border, to face off against the Blue Jays. The young gun, Trent Thornton, goes for the Blue Jays. Meanwhile, for the Tampa Bay Rays, it is the opener, Ryan Stanek. Total on this game is 8.5, and it is currently minus 110 in all but one shop. I'm seeing one minus 120 on the under, which makes the over even juice in this game. Everything else is minus 110 both ways on a total of 8.5. If you like the Tampa Bay Rays, you're going to be laying anywhere between minus 127 and minus 130. If you want to take a shot on the Toronto Blue Jays, you're going to get anywhere between a plus 113 and plus 120 price. And this is one in which I really got to look under. The Tampa Bay Rays have such a good bullpen. Stanek, whenever he's been an opener, has been able to do a terrific job for this team. You got to think that Yarbrough is going to be able to come in from there. And whenever he's had Stanek starting for him, and then he comes in, it's been going really well for the Tampa Bay Rays. It has ever since last year. I really like the way that they're able to bring in a number of guys, and I think that it's going to keep a Toronto Blue Jays team that, truth be told, is not hitting very well. The Blue Jays seem to have found a little bit in their series against the Boston Red Sox. They were able to put up a pair of games in which they had 5+ runs, which had really been a rarity for them so far this year. So Obviously, things are going well for the Toronto Blue Jays in that regard. They were able to get Justin Smoke going. He hit his second home run of the year in that game. Freddie Galvis is hitting above 350. That has been really going well for him. But Randall Grichuk is still hitting below 200. Brandon Drury is not getting on base. Lourdes Gurriel has not been able to get the job done. Burrito has not had a single hit seemingly all year long. It's been incredible. And Justin Smoke himself not hitting for a lot of average. Meanwhile, for the Tampa Bay Rays, they're coming off a very good series against the Chicago White Sox. Got to think that the offense is going to cool down a little bit. Austin Meadows has been terrific for this team. He's got 4 home runs, 13 RBI, hitting 341. G-Man Choi has been hitting nearly 300. He's able to provide some power as well. But then you've got some later hitting bats for the Tampa Bay Rays. Guys like Robertson at third base is hitting only 200. Willie Adames at the bottom of the lineup isn't doing much, along with the new catcher Mike Zunino. But I will say that they're getting a lot out of Tommy Pham. I feel like the Cardinals gave up on him a little bit too soon because he's been doing a very good job, as well as Kevin Kiermaier. Kiermaier was hitting below 200 pretty much all year last year. He's really found himself. He's been able to hit a couple dingers. So I do like the Tampa Bay Rays in this spot. I am right now waiting to see if this ticks down to more around minus 120 or minus 125. And for that matter, I actually might look at a run line play with the Tampa Bay Rays if the juice does not come down, because I really do like the Tampa Bay Rays in this spot. But I have already locked in this under just because the bullpen of the Tampa Bay Rays is so good. The Blue Jays in general just do not have a prolific offense. And even the Rays themselves not necessarily lighting the world on fire with their bats. So already locked in the under, wait and see mode on the price with the Tampa Bay Rays. 967, 968 on the betting rotation. It is the Baltimore Orioles in Boston to face off against the Red Sox. David S. will toe the rubber for the Baltimore Orioles. Meanwhile, Eduardo Rodriguez goes for the Boston Red Sox. The total on this game is 9.5. You're seeing a little bit of shading to the under. The under is between minus 110 and minus 115. The over is between minus 105 and minus 110. If you like the Red Sox, get prepared to pay a very hefty price. They're between a minus 250 and minus 260 favorite. If you want to take a shot on the Baltimore Orioles, that is between plus 210 and plus 225. Oh my gosh, I feel like such a schmuck, but I'm taking the Orioles. The value's here. I hate to say it, but I'm taking the Orioles. Laugh at me all you want. When this thing goes down in flames like 15-7, I'm going to feel so awful about it. But gosh darn it, the Orioles, it's hard to get behind the Orioles, but at the same time, are we seeing the way that the Red Sox are playing? They are entering this game, and they are a minus 250 favorite. I don't know how you lay it with the Boston Red Sox at this point. They've got some decent bats. Got like the way that JD Martinez has been hitting. Mitch Moreland has 4 home runs on the year. You've still got Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts and company, but the pitching of the Boston Red Sox has been atrocious. I know that a couple days ago against the Arizona Diamondbacks, they looked very good with guys like Workman and Brazier being able to give this team some quality innings, but I just have a tough time sticking my chips in the basket of Rodriguez to start with, because he enters into this game with an ERA right around 15. And then you've got your guys that are out there in middle relief like Tyler Thornburg and Brian Johnson. They just leave a lot to be desired. Brian Johnson enters into this game with a 12.7 ERA. And you know that with Rodriguez on the mound that he is going to be out of this game very soon. And with the Baltimore Orioles, Trey Boom Boom Mancini has done a great job of hitting for this team. He's hitting .333, 6 home runs, 12 RBI. I really like his upside. Rio Ruiz is able to provide a little bit of something out there in the middle of the lineup as well. With the Baltimore Orioles, you've also got Jonathan Villar, who does a good job of being able to get on base. He's hitting above 300 so far this year. Nunez at the DH spot is hitting .250 as well. And you gotta think at some point, Chris Davis is gonna get a hit. I always hate using the do-for-one theory in betting in general, but at some point, Chris Davis is going to get a hit. It's bound to happen. I mean, even a broken clock is right twice a day. So you gotta think that at some point, the Orioles are going to get something out of Chris Davis. Why not have it be today? this is a spot where I do think that both teams are going to be giving up a lot of runs. So I am also on this total over. I've already locked in the over. I'm right now in wait-and-see mode on the Baltimore Orioles. If 225 is the best I can get, 225 is the best I can get. But I do think that there's going to be steam coming in on the Boston Red Sox. And you know what? There's just value here with the Baltimore Orioles. I'll look like a fool when this thing doesn't come through, but Orioles and over, waiting on the Orioles price, already locked in the over. 969, 970 on the betting rotation. Let's get away from that as quickly as possible. The Oakland A's are in Texas to face off against the Rangers. Drew Smyly toes the rubber for the Rangers. Meanwhile, for the Oakland A's, Mike Straight Fires is taking the mound. Total in this game is 10.5 at most spots with the juice minus 110 on both the over and the under. There are a couple 10s out there as well. With the 10s, the over is minus 120, the under is even. And if you like the Oakland A's, you're going to be laying between minus 117 and minus 120. Meanwhile, if you want to take a shot on the Texas Rangers, you're getting between a plus 102 and plus 110 price. Drew Smyly is a guy that I just really have a tough time backing. Mike Fiers has gotten off to a slow start so far this year. He was a sensational bet-on pitcher last year. He's been really getting touched up so far this year, but I think that he's going to be able to have a quality start in this one because something I've noticed with the Texas Rangers is even though their bats have gotten online, they still do have a lot of guys that they're either going to hit a home run or they're just going to get out. Joey Gallo is one of those guys. He provides a lot of power. He's got 4 home runs, but he's also hitting below 200. Elvis Andrus and Sin Chu Chu do a very good job of getting on base, and it's Drupal Cabrera off to a very nice start to the year. And the Texas Rangers were able to have a successful road trip against the Arizona Diamondbacks, but you just cannot rely on Delino DeShields Jr. being able to get on base. Hunter Pence is off to a good start. I think that he's going to cool down. And then you've got something out there at first base by the name of Patrick Wisdom that's hitting below 200 as well. That's not a redeeming quality. Meanwhile, with the Oakland A's, Chris with a K Davis, my goodness, in 17 games, he's got 9 home runs and 17 RBI. He's been terrific. Marcus Semien hitting above 300 for this team. Matt Chapman has been able to provide both some average and a little bit of pop for this team, and that trip to Baltimore is exactly what this team needed, as Steven Piscotty was a little bit cold during that road trip, but Chad Pinder was able to get himself online. Kendrys Morales was able to get a couple hits yesterday. Jerickson Profar was able to find himself a couple home runs as well. Loreno is providing something at the bottom of the lineup. All in all, you've got an A's team that's doing a great job of hitting, and they're going up against a guy in Drew Smyly that, let's face it, he hadn't been pitching in the majors the past couple years, and so far the start to this year hasn't necessarily gone well. But what I will say for the Texas Rangers is that they have a very good bullpen, so I do think that Smyly gets roughed up for 3 or 4 runs, but then they go immediately to the bullpen. So that is going to be my reasoning for this play. I am on this total under. I already locked in under 10.5 runs, and I'm looking at the A's run line in the spot. I think that they're able to win a game in the neighborhood of 6-2, 6-3. Right now, the A's run line price I'm seeing is plus 125. Trying to see if I can get more of a plus 130 or plus 135 before I lock this thing in, but the under already has been locked in. 971, 972 on the betting rotation. It is the Detroit Tigers on the road to face off against the Minnesota Twins, or at least they were supposed to be, as this game has been postponed. If you see anyone saying that either the Tigers or the Minnesota Twins are the stone-cold lead pipe lock of the century, I assure you that that play will not lose, and I also assure you you are going to make no money whatsoever on that play. So we move on to 973, 974 on the betting rotation. The Cleveland Indians are in Kansas City to face off against the Royals. Brad Keller goes for the Kansas City Royals. Carlos Carrasco goes for the Cleveland Indians. Total in this game is 7.5, with the total shaded a little bit under. If you like the under, that is between minus 110 and minus 115. The over is between minus 110 and minus 105. And if you like the Royals, you're going to be getting anywhere between plus 130 and plus 135. Meanwhile, for the Cleveland Indians, you're going to be laying a price of between minus 140 and minus 145. The Indians were able to take 2 of 3 from the Tigers, and all in all for the year, they've been doing a very solid job of being able to pick up wins, but the offense just really hasn't come around for this team. And Carlos Carrasco, he does a great job of being able to get strikeouts, but when he gets hit hard, and he doesn't necessarily have the best command either. He enters into this game with a whip of 1.93, and I do think that Brad Keller is by far the best starter for the Kansas City Royals, a Royals team that has just a brutal bullpen. The good news in this one is because Brian Boxberger pitched yesterday and he gave up the lead, a lot of which was also thanks to Billy Hamilton, he's probably not going to be pitching today. So we get to bet on the Kansas City Royals not bringing out their Brad Boxberger, but I really do like what I've seen out of Brad Keller. He's 1-1 so far this year in 3 starts. He's not a guy that necessarily is going to wipe you out with his stuff. He has only 13 strikeouts in those 19 innings, but he does a good job of being able to not get roughed up. He does a great job of being able to keep the ball in the yard. He sometimes has a little bit of a walks issue, but I do like what he's able to bring to the table. And for the Kansas City Royals, Alex Gordon is doing a great job of getting on base. His OBP is .458, so I do like that. Jorge Soler has 3 home runs and 12 RBI. The Kansas City Royals have a couple good bats, and they've got a couple not so good bats. Mondesi and Whit Merrifield at the top of the lineup have been doing a nice job of getting on base. And then at the bottom of the lineup, well, the Kansas City Royals don't have a lot going, as Dozier, Owings, Maldonado, all hitting below 200, but a guy that you need to watch out for that's hitting over 400, Terrence Gore. I do like his speed. I do like the way that he's been getting on base. I feel like he can be a little bit of an X factor for the Kansas City Royals. Meanwhile, for the Cleveland Indians, you got a bunch of guys that are not really hitting for this team. Hanley Ramirez is hitting below 200 so far this year. Leonis Martin seems to be coming around. He had a nice 3-hit day yesterday against the Detroit Tigers, but Jose Ramirez hitting a .136. Kevin Plawecki is hitting a .143. Brad Miller, after getting 2 hits yesterday, now hitting .231. And then you've got Maroff and Stamets, who are both hitting below 100. I mean, it is just absolutely brutal without Francisco Lindor, and I do feel like this is a good chance to be able to take a plus price here. So I do think that the Kansas City Royals are going to be able to get to Carlos Carrasco. I'm going to play this total over. I do think that the Royals bullpen is going to get a little bit touched up after Keller gives this team a quality start, but I'm going to look to see what kind of price I can get with the Kansas City Royals. Right now in wait-and-see mode to see what kind of a number I get, but have already locked in the over on this game, and I am going to be on the Kansas City Royals. 975, 976 on the betting rotation. It is the Houston Astros in Seattle to face off against the Mariners. Wade LeBlanc goes for the Seattle Mariners. Meanwhile, Wade Miley on the bump for the Houston Astros. Total in this game is 9. 9 is between -110 and -115 juice on the under, which makes the over between -110 and -105. If you like the Seattle Mariners, you are going to be getting a plus price on this one of between -115 and -120. If you want to lay it with the Houston Astros, that is between -129 and -130. And I do like the Houston Astros in this spot, and I actually like them so much I'm going to look at the run line. Run line that I'm seeing right now is between +110 and +115. Going to try to see if I can get more of a +120 price, and I do feel like Wade Miley is a little bit of an underrated starter. So far this year, he's got a .231 ERA. He was absolutely sensational for the Brewers last year, was a very undervalued pitcher. He's not a guy that's going to go out there and he's going to light the world on fire. He's not much of a strikeout guy. Last year, in 80 2/3 innings with the Brewers, he had only 50 strikeouts, but he did a good job of being able to keep the ball in the yard. He does a good job of being able to limit walks. He's very conservative with his pitches, so I do like that. And meanwhile, Wade LeBlanc is another little bit of an underrated pitcher. He's 2-0 with a .476 ERA for the Seattle Mariners. Once again, not a guy that's going to light up the radar gun and give you a bunch of strikeouts, but he pitches well to what's now called T-Mobile Park. It's really weird not saying Safeco when you attribute the park out there in Seattle, but I do think that the Houston Astros are going to be able to get into this bullpen that is a little bit shaky for the Seattle Mariners. With the Mariners, you've got Chasen Bradford on the 10-day injured list. Felix Hernandez is day-to-day, so is Kikuchi. So the pitching staff of the Seattle Mariners is really thin, especially with Hunter Strickland being out for the foreseeable future. And with the Mariners, you also have Jay Bruce, who is day-to-day, so this is a team that is a little bit banged up. With the Houston Astros, it looks like Alex Bregman is day-to-day. You're going to want to check on his status for this one, but they still do have a bunch of guys that are hitting, and they really came around in that series against the Houston Astros. We are noticing that Jose Altuve and George Springer have gotten back to their old selves. Michael Brantley was really able to connect in that series. Carlos Correa was able to do the same. Tyler White at the DH spot is a guy that I actually like, and we notice that Kemp has been starting to come around with the bat as well. Jake Marisnick has been actually sensational with the bat so far this year as well. He's hitting just below 400, so I really do like what the Astros are able to bring to the table, and I think that they're going to be able to win a little bit of a lower scoring game. I know that the overs have been hot for the Seattle Mariners, but I think that Wade Miley and the guys that are coming out of the bullpen are going to be able to deliver a very good performance for the Houston Astros in this one. So for that reason, I am in wait-and-see mode to see what kind of a price I can get on the Astros online, and I'm going to be playing this total under, trying to see if I can get a little bit more favorable juice on the under. And we are going to be wrapping things up with game number 977, 978 on the betting rotation. It is the LA Angels in Chicago to face off against the Cubs. Cole Hamels goes on the bump for the Cubs. Meanwhile, Tyler Skaggs for the Angels. Total on this game is currently off the board because it is a game in Wrigley. It is going to be based on the weather, and it is currently the Angels are between a plus 135 and plus 145 underdog. Meanwhile, you take a look at the Chicago Cubs. You are going to be laying between minus 155 and minus 150 with them. The big question with this game is Mike Trout going to be in the lineup? We saw him not play against the Milwaukee Brewers a couple days ago. He is currently, and I quote day to day, with a groin strain, which is why I am in wait-and-see mode with this Angels play. I am actually going to be on the Angels just because I have zero faith in the Cubs bullpen whatsoever. The Cubs are just such a head-scratching team at this point because you've got so many good bats out there. Javi Baez, Jason Hayward is actually off to a really nice start so far this year. Daniel Descalso has been doing a good job of being able to get on base. You've got Ben Zobrist and company. But Cole Hamels, he came over last year and he was sensational. This year, he hasn't been so good. And then when you leave it up to the bullpen, you just don't know what you're going to get. I like Carl Edwards Jr. He's been a solid reliever. Pedro Strop, I think at some point is going to come around, but so many of those other guys, it's just, it's not good whatsoever. And I actually like Tyler Skaggs as a starter. He's not a guy that necessarily has eye-popping numbers or anything like that. He doesn't do anything great, but he just seems to be able to keep the ball in the ballpark. We obviously have no total on this one, but I'm going to lean towards the over if it is something small. If it's something huge, I might be looking at the under. And obviously, this all depends on Mike Trout, too. So this total is one that you're going to need to check back on my Twitter page at @G_81 in the morning for, because there are so many questions with this one. But I'm going to probably take a shot on the Angels just because even without Mike Trout, they were able to knock off the Brewers a couple days ago. Now, they were able to get a little bit lucky with Andrelton Simmons being able to step up in that game. He has been very inconsistent for this team, to say the least. He's sitting just below the Mendoza line. Albert Pujols hasn't necessarily gotten things going, but I do like what David Fletcher is able to provide. He's been hitting right around 300 for the squad. He does have some upside. Justin Bour seems to be finally coming around after he was ice cold to begin the year as well, so that's a bat that can help out in the middle of the lineup. You got to think that at some point, guys like Cozart and Peter Borges are going to step up, and I do like the Angels bullpen as well. They are number one in the bigs in regards to bullpen ERA, so if they're able to get some sort of a lead of like a run or two, they will be able to get the job done and close it out. So right now, obviously in wait-and-see mode on the total, and currently in wait-and-see mode on the Angels. I will be on them, but if Mike Trout is not in the lineup, expect this number to shoot to the moon, and then you're able to find a whole lot of value, because what we've noticed is when Mike Trout's not in the lineup, you can get essentially like 50 extra cents on every dollar with the LA Angels, and that is something you can't find with nearly anyone else in baseball. So for that reason, in wait-and-see mode on pretty much all these plays in regards to Cubs versus Angels, but not in wait-and-see mode on the rest of this podcast, as we are all done here. A big thanks to Joe Osbourne of OddsShark for joining me in the last segment, as I guess you could say it is OddsShark week here on MLB Overtime Betting. And if you like what you're hearing on this fine podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you ever have a question for the podcast, feel free to tweet it in at @Judith_81. And let's make today a successful, fun, and profitable day. And I will talk at you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.